Hello, friends. Welcome to the Montalbano Family Theater at the Vancouver Public Library. Hey, how are you? My name is Jorge Amigo, and I'm the head of cultural programming here at VPL. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that we are hosting this event from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh. And as some of you already know, I'm an immigrant from Mexico, which means I'm a settler in these lands. So I feel a particular responsibility to continually learn about the ongoing effects of colonialism in this part of the world and to always bring that awareness into my work as a public servant for you in this library and to make sure that informs the way that I program things for these stages. So on that note, it is an honor for me to organize tonight's event and gather all of you here to celebrate Joseph's new novel, debut novel, My Indian Summer. Let's give him a round of applause. So a quick show of hands, who has never been in this room before? Great, so half of you have been here, that's great. And who has been to a VPL event in the last year? All of you, except, well, one of you hasn't. So this is great, 99% of you. So we're doing something right. For those of you who haven't been here, a couple of housekeeping notes for this room. The bathrooms are located at the end of this floor, so you just exit and go to the right. It's at the very end. Sorry for the walk. We're not at the ballet. This is not the symphony, so you can come in and out as many times as you want. Just be mindful that door is really loud, so just come in and out quietly if you can. And take a moment right now to silence your cell phones. You can keep them on and take pictures and videos and post all over social media that you're at a cool library event. I would love that, actually. But just make sure they're not making noise during the event. The one thing that people usually forget to do is turn off their alarms, because their phone is silent, but the alarm kind of sneaks in there and makes noise. That happens to me all the time. So before I introduce tonight's speakers, I want to tell you about two film events that we have coming up next week in this very theater. So next Wednesday, we're hosting an afternoon of Indigenous short films. So what my team has done is we've selected 10 recent short films from the National Film Board, and we're going to screen them here from 12 to 3 p.m. on Wednesday. And basically, we're going to showcase the work of Haida artists Bill Reed and Robert Davidson, and new animation from some emerging creatives, and some documentary work by Indigenous filmmakers and activists. So that's going to be an afternoon of films here that my team curated. And then on Friday, we're going to host a watch party for Elliot Page's book launch. And that is happening in Toronto. So what does this all mean? So it means that Elliot Page has a new book out. It's a highly anticipated memoir called Page Boy. But his only Canadian appearance will be at the Toronto International Film Festival on Friday. So we kind of negotiated to get an exclusive live stream so that we can watch that live stream here of that event in Toronto. And we figured, just so that you're not sitting there watching a live stream, we also added an hour of trivia before that. So we're going to have Pride-themed trivia. It's going to be a fun event. Hopefully we can have popcorn. And then after that, we're going to give copies of the book as prizes for trivia and then watch Elliot Page. So that's Friday. Please come. And now, let me introduce tonight's speakers. So Joseph Kakwinokanasum is of Cree and Austrian descent, and he grew up in the Peace region of northern BC. Joseph is a graduate of SFU's Writer Studio, and his short story, Ray Says, was a finalist for CBC's 2020 Nonfiction Prize. And he was just telling me that last year, he was selected by Darrel McLeod as one of the Writer Trust of Canada's Rising Stars, which is awesome to have you here, Joseph. He can't hear me because the sound quality of this room is weird. Dallas Hunt is Cree and a member of the Wapsipi First Nation, Swan River First Nation, in Treaty 8 territory in northern Alberta. And he has had his work published everywhere, like Mile Hat Review, the Arc Poetry, Canadian Literature, the American Indian Culture and Research Journal. And he also is a professor at UBC, where he teaches Indigenous literatures, decolonial theory, Canadian literature, and critical theory. And he's awesome to follow on Twitter. So they're going to chat for about 45 minutes, and then they're going to take questions from the audience. So let's get them started. Now they can hear me.
How's everybody tonight? We're ready to rock and roll? Yeah. Sorry. I'm just really fucking nervous. All right, take it away, baby.
Let me pour some water here.
Alrighty. Love you too. It's good to see you. It's been a long time.
Do you go by Joseph or Joe?
Oh, I don't care. I really don't. My mother calls me Joe, so Joseph's fine.
I'll go JK. I'm going to set my timer just because I'm meticulous with this and I don't want to go over time. So let's do that. Thank you.
De rien.
And here we go. I'm going to go for about 35.
Daddy, I gotta pee.
So JK, as I've been calling you, what was the process like of writing this novel?
It was long. I'd say that, like I started writing this book probably when I was about 10. It's an accumulation of a bunch of things that sort of just happened along the way, and a lot of the characters are developed from just experiences that I've had since, from 10 years old to like 54, and like the drug dealers, the Cookums, the uncle, the man in the forest, these are all people that I just sort of met. And some of them are actually compilations of people, 5 or 6 different people in one character. And I guess the process was just, for the most part, like, it started off as a memoir. And I got to the stage where I was, getting sick and tired of writing it because it was just so emotionally draining to talk about the trauma all the time and in such a serious way. So when I signed with Tidewater, they read the manuscript, and my editor called me crying and said, "This is really hard." And I said, "Yeah, I know. Tell me about it. I lived this." She's like, "Do you need emotional distance from this?" She said, "I'll do this with you, but I'm wondering if you need some emotional distance, and would you consider writing fiction, fictionalizing all of this?" And so I said, "Yeah, I think that's actually a really good idea. It's a self-care thing. It's a different direction. It's a different way of writing. Memoir is different from fiction." And I needed that challenge. I needed something to pull me out of the doldrums, because at the time when I did sign the contract, I was burnt out from writing memoir. So yeah, after I decided to write it as a fiction, it gave me a little more wiggle room in terms of the emotions, but also I got to have a little more fun with the characters, and I got to get inside their heads as opposed to just always staying inside my own, and that was a huge relief,
Yeah, these sort of shifts between genre I find incredibly interesting, because then you get to talk about Gladys, and I'm guessing these names are not the names of the people, well, you don't have to spill any beans right now if you don't want to, but as you're writing it, and it takes on this new character, it's so interesting how the genre can actually shift, the form shifts, right?
Yeah, it's incredible how that metamorphosis happens. And what was really weird about it is I didn't see it happen until it was over. I didn't actually see it. It's almost like being in a fog, and you're doing everything you possibly can to keep up, to do everything that your editor is telling you to do, because it's all new. And the editors are saying, oh, well, try reading this book, try reading that book, look at this person, read this, read that. So I did, I don't know how many fucking books I read, in a year, probably 15 or 20 different books on writing, and different examples that my editor was giving me. And between all of that, I was working 18-hour days sometimes, sitting in my little cubicle, and because at the time I didn't have my motorhome. Thank God I have that now. Anyways, long and short of it is when I finally finished writing it and I'm looking at it, I got a clearer picture of it. It was almost like, looking at a picture in the close and then backing up really far away and seeing details that you never saw before. And when I finally read the book, I didn't read the book until, like 2 months ago. I couldn't. I didn't have the bandwidth. And when I did, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I wrote this.
As someone who writes too as well, I hate reading my own writing. Some days I'm like, that's not bad, and then some days I'm like, oh God, that's terrible. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read some of your writing to you.
Oh, goody.
And just get you to extrapolate on some of these passages.
I feel my face turning red.
No.
Is it? Yeah, okay.
I like them, that's why I... So, page 81, chapter 5, Money, 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 which I liked a lot. Tansy Kokum, he moved into the trailer. Anything today? Maud pointed to the wood crate. Help yourself to some stew. Take a pop there, too. Hunter set his packages on the table, took a pop from the fridge, and served himself a bowl of stew. Second time I've run into you. Crow looked at the boy. It was inevitable, said Gladys. I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner. The other Kookums nodded in agreement. I've seen him plenty before, him and his two buddies. Just every time it seems they're on the other side of the street, going the other way, said Crow. You two have something in common, said Donna. Take care of each other, said Maud. And I just wanted to get you to sort of extrapolate on that because I have my own thoughts on it, but I want to hear yours first. Yeah.
Well, Maud Cookham, she's kind of a all of the Cookhams are just sort of characters, aunties that I've had long passed away, and there was this old Métis lady. We called her Grandma House back home, and she was like a matriarch to us little kids. She gave us an income. I would go and trap rabbits, and in the winter and in the summer, and I would get more money for the winter rabbits because the snowshoe turn white in the winter. And sometimes she'd want speckled rabbits, so you'd have to go just as they were changing back. And you'd get extra money for that kind of stuff, eh? And Cookham, she took care of us even though, we didn't realize what she was doing, So that character is based on a lot on Grandma House, but also my aunties who helped me out so much, I think they all saw what was going on in the house, growing up, and my aunties always sort of took care of me, and they favored me, and I never forget that. Crow, on the other hand, well, he's this guy that used to come into town all the time, an old Indian man. He'd come in, he'd run into the Cookhams too, and he'd they'd give him $50 for his beaver pelts and his muskrat and, you know, and cougar or whatever he was, you know, and he'd come in every couple of months with a bunch of furs, and he'd come into town, and we'd all see him walking, and he'd go down to the store and pick up flour and coffee and all those other things, and then he'd disappear off into the bush again for months. And he was a trapper, just an old native guy, you know. Nobody really talked to him, though. I think his name was Johnny Freeman, but he was a really quiet guy. But yeah, those characters were mostly extrapolated from people that I met or grew up with or had something to do with as a child. It was close to memoir as you can get without being memoir.
Also, no one on a res is like they don't have a name. They always have a nickname.
Always a nickname. No. Yeah, there's always a nickname. They always called me Little Man.
Yeah.
On the reserve, yeah. A little man named Joe. They would always sing this song. I had no idea what the hell the song was. I still don't know what that song is. There's a little man named Joe. And it's little man.
Little man. Mine was Dally.
Oh my goodness! All right, that's
Yeah.
awesome. See, I think I like Dally better than Little Man, because I mean I was actually really fucking little. I mean I didn't start growing until I was like 17 or 18 years old.
Yeah.
And yeah, seriously. Like I mean I was 5 foot fuck all.
I like Little Man Joe though. That's a pretty good. It's like a blues song.
You know, I mean, my uncle used to, you know, he was a singer and a performer, and you know, like I mean, he would always sing that song, but he would never play an instrument to it. And my mom would sit there and she'd, you know,
Yeah.
I never knew the damn song though. They always just laughed. It was like a little inside joke, you know, parents have on their kids.
Yeah.
Let that be a lesson to all those parents out there.
Yeah.
It's all writing material.
But also on the res, you always have a nickname, right?
Always have a nickname on the res. Yeah.
But the reason I brought up that piece is because it seems to speak to a sort of everyday kind of quotidian kind of life and the kind of pockets of livability we find amongst one another. And I found it very striking and beautiful because it really spoke to that to me in terms of how I experienced, you know.
Growing up north?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
exactly.
we're both from similar places, both up from, you know, like we're not very far away from each other. We didn't grow, and I'm pretty sure, you know, like I remember going to Swan River as a kid. You had to find pockets of people, of associations to keep yourself safe up north in that town where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't or shouldn't travel alone. You know, if you're a little Indian kid, you don't walk by yourself, or you carry a big fucking stick.
I used to carry a rock.
Yeah. Rocks work too, you know, but yeah, if you're native, then, you know, it's no secret in a town of, you know, 270, 280 people, and, you know, there was a lot of racism up there, I'm not gonna lie. It was hard, you know. I mean, if you weren't getting beat up after school, you're getting beat up before school, and if you weren't getting beat up in those times, you're getting beaten up by the teachers, and then you'd go home and then you get beat up, and so it was a really dangerous place to be for a child. You know, my mother was, you know, sick with alcoholism, and you know, she didn't have any, you know, like, I mean, I think we all know that women in general don't have as many options as everybody else in the world, especially Indigenous women, women of color, and that was extremely prevalent up north. You know, my mom would come home with bruises and cuts, and, you know, watch her getting thrown out of cars and shit like that, right? you know, you're 5 or 6, 7 years old, you know, your mom comes in and she's bleeding and crying, or, you know, it's you just know. Like, I mean, I knew that life was dangerous by the time I was 3. I knew the world was a cruel place at a really young age. And I used that to my advantage. I just decided to be a nice person, try to get along with everybody, make everything smooth. And that way, I made friends.
Well, I think that piece that I just read, and I'm going to make you, I'm going to subject you to another piece. But I find it to be so tender, and Gladys and Maud and everyone's involved, and the sort of primacy of Indigenous women and how they govern and orient our communities and have historically, like, it comes through in that passage, right? Well, I mean, it comes through throughout the book, but in that passage in particular, I had a lot of stars, you know, next to it and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of care, actually. There was a lot of Indigenous people that took care of each other. I knew a man named Fred House, Grandma House's, you know, son, and he was, you know, my mom's age, and he was one of the founders of the United Natives Nations, and he was just such a charismatic politician, you know, musician, one-man band kind of guy, and if I ever felt unsafe, I know that I could always go over to his place and hang out for a little bit, wait till the smoke cleared, you know. There was a couple of houses there that I could do that. There was a kid down the street, his name was Albert Lazant, you know. Anna used to make me sandwiches all the time because she knew that I was hungry. I'd go over to his place and we'd play, and she'd make us sandwiches. And
what kind of sandwiches?
Oh man, whatever I wanted. And you know, that's the thing about Anna. She made all of her bread fresh at home, so she'd cut these big, thick slices, and she'd just pour all the peanut butter and jam that I wanted on that damn thing. Oh yeah, and a big old glass of milk. I tell you, nothing like it.
Can't beat it.
No, you can't. I mean, and it's funny actually, because I mean, Anna just passed away, and I was talking to Albert, and she just remembered all of that. And the funny thing is that my buddy Albert didn't remember all of that poverty, all of those struggles that our family was going through. He sort of blocked it out. He just didn't even realize it. And then on, you know, a couple of months before his mom passed away, she told him. And she said, "Hey, guess who I talked to? I talked to Joseph." And she's like, "Oh, how's he doing?" And then she went into the story about how she met my mom. And all, you know, all these stories come out at the end, eh? And you didn't realize, I didn't realize that my mom was such good friends with them. And so that's probably why Anna sort of, you know, helped us out a lot. She didn't just help me out, she helped my sisters out, she helped my other brothers out, you know. She'd give them jobs, babysitting or mowing lawns, doing something to earn a little bit of money, you know, and she paid really well too.
Well, as long as she got paid, yeah.
Yeah, as long as you get paid, right?
But I mean, also those things become normalized and sort of naturalized within our communities, and yeah, and I think it's. But you could give me a prime rib steak, or give me a peanut butter and jam sandwich.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Yeah.
You know what I'm gonna take.
I'm going to take the peanut butter and jam, because I'm really trying to go vegetarian lately. You know, like, I mean, I don't know. I was looking at these chicken legs the other day. My wife was like, "Hey, we got chicken legs for dinner." I'm like, and I was like, "Oh my God, there's skin on them." I was like, oh no, I can't. If it's a part I can recognize, I don't think I can eat it anymore. And so, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm native, right? I'm supposed to love meat.
Yeah, what's going on here?
I know, right? I think, I don't know, I'm going to...
You should be eating moose meat right now.
I do have a piece of moose hide on me, but... But yeah, no, I don't know if I could eat moose meat anymore either. You know.
Okay,
I don't
so another passage from your work. This is from chapter 10, Mary Jane. The steam was oppressive, the darkness absolute, the air thin. Hunter closed his eyes, held a hand over his mouth, rolled his bottom lip under his top lip, and breathed slowly through his mouth, exhaling through his nose. It was instinctive, a natural way to tolerate the intense heat and confinement. He counted the stones, his vision blurred. He was adrift with his thoughts. He saw a little girl, innocent and beautiful. She played with her mother on a floor of hides and soft furs inside a teepee. Hunter looked up through the small hole at the top of the lodge and was transported to a cold, dark place with thick walls of brick, barred windows, the sounds of suffering. Hunter gasped, and the steam burned his throat. He heard Gladys's voice saying, quote, "Look at your hands, little warrior." Hunter imagined his hands, and in his mind's eye, he could see them. A calm came over him, and he could feel a cool breeze through his fingers. And I don't know, that just sat with me, and I dwelled with that for a bit. So
I was in a sweat one time, long time ago, and I just remember my uncle teaching me this method, you know. And sometimes you go like this. You put your hand over your mouth so you can cool that air down, right? Sure. When you're breathing in the sweat, because it is a test of your ability to be able to stay with that uncomfortableness, stay with that pain. I heard an interesting thing the other day. Buffalo, when the storm comes, they see it coming. Cattle, when they see a storm coming, cattle try to run away from it. Buffalo don't. They let that storm come. They let it wash over them. And they just let it go and pass. Cattle, on the other hand, they run away from the storm. And eventually the storm catches up to them. And they keep running, and they keep running, and they keep running, keeping pace with the storm, never getting out of it. So the sweat is kind of like that. You have to let that storm pass. You have to let that uncomfortableness pass. You don't want to be cattle. You want to be buffalo.
yeah, I think most cattle are cowards, generally speaking, and so.
Well, we could get into that. But we talked about this. We're going to make jokes tonight. Yeah. We're going to have some fun.
Yeah, no, I think that's very evocative, and the image of it is, I like something that runs into a storm, right? That
Yeah. It's you know, my psychiatrist told me, you know, Joseph, when you're feeling that anxiety, when you're feeling that pain and that anger and that rage, and you just fucking want to start throwing things around the room or punching a wall and breaking your hand again, don't. Run into the fear. Run into it head fucking first. Don't take no for an answer, just go. As hard as it is, it's best to just confront it, rip the Band-Aid off, and get it over with. It allows me to be more analytical about the trauma that I had and where this anxiety, where this fear is being informed, how it's being informed. and who's informing it, because it's not just my voice in my head sometimes. Sometimes it's my mother's, sometimes it's my brother's, and sometimes it's Cookham. It's a nice soft voice I like to listen to, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I had a psychiatrist or psychologist, etc., one time say to me, it's okay to feel anxious. And that actually reoriented. It has actually a lot to do with the buffalo, except they're more, it seems like they have a proclivity to just like, you know, fuck it, like I'm gonna run at this storm.
Have you ever seen buffalo take care of their young? They
Yeah.
don't fuck around. They don't fuck around. That's like, you know, the babies go in the center of the ring and the buffalo stands there and they just don't move. They will kill anything that fucks with their children. And that's why the buffalo is such a powerful symbol for us.
Yeah. Okay. I saved them till the end, but more difficult questions.
Oh boy.
So, oftentimes in Indigenous literature, notions of culture or identity obscure or take precedence over our political assertions as Indigenous peoples to land, our efforts against resource extraction, etc. So how would you describe this phenomenon, and how does it manifest in your work?
Well, the prologue, I believe Margaret says there no more white men taking away our children. And, or no, maybe that was her sister. Yeah, it was her sister that said that. And then Margaret said, there's no fucking way they're going to take my kids away from me. That's a political statement in itself. And I did try to make political statements in the book. And I did try to be, you know, polarizing sometimes. Because let's face it, truth and reconciliation is not an easy thing to talk about. It makes people uncomfortable. And the other thing, though, is I didn't want to bash people over the heads with it. It's hard enough to talk about. I don't want to guilt anybody. There's enough guilt in the world. I feel enough guilt just being who I am. I know I'm not supposed to, but I do. So, in terms of politics, resource extraction, shit, man, they found diamonds on our fucking reserve. And you know what that means, right? Corporations are coming in and they're not going to fucking take no for an answer. They already have. They started digging. They've not offered us anything. The government lets them do it. And we're still on boil water advisories, if you can call it that, because we don't actually have water on James Smith Reserve. You have to get it trucked in. There's nothing there. Not for the people, anyways. There's something there for the corporations and the government, but there's nothing there for the people. They've polluted the river, the North Saskatchewan. You can't fish in it anymore because some oil company, you know, 100 miles north is dumping their spew into the friggin' river, and it's killed everything. So our traditional, not even our traditional land, though, because we're fucking Plains Cree. We're not Woodland Cree. We were moved from, like, Moose Jaw and carted up north to share, you know, a small little plot of land with 3 other fucking nations.
You can't shit talk the Woodland Cree because
I'm not shit talking Woodland Cree, baby. I thought I was Woodland Cree for 40 fucking years.
Because
I
I'm
was like,
Woodland
yay,
Cree.
yay! Fucking, you know.
I'm Woodland Cree, and you can't do that to me.
I love the Woodland Cree, but I mean, that was part of the lie. You know, you don't come from the prairies. This is where you belong. You know, and it's you know, it's difficult and it's really hard to be political and polite at the same time. Especially when you're talking about truth and reconciliation, human rights, women's rights, children's rights, you know. How do you say something like that, you know, fuck off, just give women the right. Fuck off, just give people of color the right. Let's level this playing field. How do you say that without pissing off some really, really rich, over-entitled white dude? How do you do that? I'm asking. That's as close as I could get to it.
There's a lot of those. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what the irony of that is? Like when I was at my book signing in Black Bond Books in White Rock, I think I sold this book to probably 15 different white men, old white men. And about 10 minutes later, after selling it to one white guy, a lady comes in. She says, "Oh, my friend over there is reading your book." And I asked him, she said, how is it? And he's like, "I just finished the prologue. It's pretty good." You know? So I think there's hope out there. And I think, the soft mallet works.
Yeah, I think there's something in working with that legibility and how you sort of navigate it, right? You can't completely alienate people, but you also want to, as you said, you're a little polemical in your writing, and I got that in reading the novel, which you should all pick up a copy of. But yeah, the finding that sort of balance.
It's taken a long time. I've been in therapy for 20 years, 20 plus years now. I still see my therapist. I'm seeing him now, right now, 3-4 times a month now, and just because, I still have anxiety. I still have, nightmares. The trauma doesn't go away. My therapists, they just help me refine the tools that I already have, sharpen them up a little bit, and sometimes develop different ones to help me with new things that come up, because, new things always come up. Always trying to find a better way a more efficient way to sort of deal with the painful, stabbing anxiety.
So, sort of shifting gears here, the last good film you saw, the last good song you listened to, and the last good TV show.
Okay, so the last good TV show is Ted Lasso.
Yeah, but don't spoil the final.
Okay, I won't. And the last good movie I watched was Jojo Rabbit.
Oh, okay.
And what was the other one?
Song.
Who?
Song.
Okay. Well, I know this is going to sound crazy, but it's an old song from 1920 something or other. It was sung by what was her name?
Please don't sing it.
It's a black artist, black blues artist. It's "Nobody Knows You When You're Down and Out."
Okay, maybe sing it then.
Nobody knows you when you're down and out. Right? It's Eric Clapton did a copy of it. She probably did a copy of it, but it's a really old, 1920, 1930 type song in the days of Lead Belly, that kind of time period. But yeah, I heard it and I was just like, wow, okay, I have to learn how to play this song. So,
I kind of want to go to karaoke with you because you have a good voice.
Yeah. That's no, I don't think so.
But as our time is running out between you and I thought I would ask if we have any questions from the audience about the book. If you haven't had a chance to read it, please do. It's just a stunner of a book. But if you have any questions for Joe, generally speaking, now's the time.
No math questions. Yeah, actually. That's a really great question. And the answer is yes, I did. Um, I used the opportunity to learn more about myself and sort of get some things off of my chest. And in the process, it was actually quite a painful process, because when I was writing the memoir, I had to actually call family members to tell them that I was writing a memoir, so I didn't get sued. And so that didn't go over very well. And so that was really frustrating. Emotionally, it was just because, I mean, I'd done all of this work for the book, for the memoir. And it was J.J. Lee who said, you know, maybe we should do something different with this, you know, and maybe toy with this idea. And I thought, oh, okay, well, you know, here it goes. You know, he's just trying to change my mind, make me think differently about this. And, you know, like, I was questioning my relationship with J.J. Lee, because I thought he was trying to push me away from something that I needed to do. The reality was is he actually knew better than I did. And when I wrote it like this, when I changed to fiction, I actually had more freedom to be emotional, to be angry, to justify my characters, to get some dessert, you know? And that was what was really liberating about this particular project. Yeah, good question. Thank you so much. Hi.
So it kind of builds on the answer you just gave. And by the way, you do have a lovely voice.
Oh, thank you so much.
But how is it writing a memoir? Something that's kind of based on truth. I know that you turned it into fiction, and kind of navigating your relationships that could be reflected in that book where people might see themselves in it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. When I did write this, when I was writing the memoir, there's several people in this crowd who have read bits and pieces of it, who have worked with me on it at the writer's studio. And there's always that risk when you're writing memoir of confrontation with family, with people that you know in your life that that you're writing about, you know, teachers, you know, parents, you know, shit like that, right? When I wrote this book, I did send the manuscript to my brothers and sisters. I sent one to my mother as best as I could. And I waited. I waited as long as my publisher would let me. It's Joseph, it's go time. We can't wait any longer for your family. It's a fiction anyways now. So fuck 'em. And so I did. I mean, I didn't fuck 'em, but you know what I mean. I just said, okay, I did my due diligence, and none of my family has read it. So in terms of, you know, how did I deal with their reaction to the book, I haven't reacted yet, because I haven't, you know, like, I mean, I haven't talked to much of my family. Like, most of my family has been estranged from me for 40 years. I haven't spoken to my mother in, you know, since 2015 or 2016. And I haven't spoken to most of my family for longer than that, since the 90s, I think. It was a hard place to be, you know. I think we all hurt each other too, right? Like, I mean, especially the little ones like me. Like, I mean, I was one of the youngest. We all got picked on, and we were a target. Kids are targets. And so my brothers and sisters, my mother especially, I'm assuming and I'm hoping that they have a lot of guilt about what they did. Like, I hope they have nightmares about what they did. But I still forgive them. You know, it's really complicated. So I don't know, does that kind of answer the question? Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Okay, I'll answer that question first because it's the easiest. Indian summer is like, it's the summer that lasts until, like just after Halloween. Because up north, it always snows before Halloween. And in an Indian summer, well, it doesn't snow until, maybe the first week of November. And the air tastes different. And there's more time to do things. The farmers have better crops. It's a little bit better of a boom for kids, because the mosquitoes have all been washed away from the first frost, and you can go outside and play without getting eaten alive, and like there's a freshness about the environment, and the Cree have a word for that, and my Uncle Howard used to call it "kegats," which means it's just about to turn. It's that moment just before seasons turn. It's called kegats. So, and the other one, the other question, the Cookums, there was a lot of women in my life. And, if it wasn't for women in my life as a child growing up, even as a young adult, I lived on my own since I was 14. So, long story short is I woke up one day, Mom was gone. And then I had to get a job. So I got a job at the Dairy Queen. I got a job working, at a pub, washing dishes, and then I got a job as a night watchman at a hotel. And and I went to school at the same time. Don't know how I graduated. But in all of these places that I was working, and through that whole time that I from 14 to 18, working, going to school, paying bills, all that other stuff, I had all these women helping me out, teaching me how to save money. I needed a VCR, so this one lady, Rose, she worked at the Park Hotel where I was washing dishes. She bought that VCR for me. And then she said, give me $20 a month. And I did. Gave her $20 every paycheck. It was a small thing, but, it was really, really generous. And when I graduated high school, there was all of these women lining up, taking measurements, they bought me a jacket for my graduation, they rented me a tux, they did all of this stuff for me, all women. I have a lot to be thankful for, it was these women that made me who I am. It showed me that generosity and that kindness and that care, that stuff that my mother wasn't doing. Everybody knew that I was alone, so.
But it's those pockets of livability that we were talking about earlier, right? And how you sort of inhabit it. But that said, what was your favorite VCR?
It was a Panasonic, and it had 3 speeds, right? And it had a freeze button that was like so crystal clear. So when you rented a movie, you didn't get that in the screen. It was a full-on still picture. It was the best. It cost me $500 back then. 1985. Wow. That was a lot of money. That was like rent and some.
What's weird about that is I didn't mean what was your favorite VCR player.
Oh my
what was
God.
your favorite?
That was my favorite VCR. I've had many. I have one at home. It's a piece of shit. So.
Well, now I know what to buy, but I mean,
stick with the Panasonics.
Yeah. But what was your favorite VCR film?
Oh, my favorite VCR. Stand By Me. Stephen King.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I just loved that movie. The music, the everything. I mean, this book was bloody well, inspired by that. It really was. Like, I mean, when I read that damn book, oh, God. And I loved it so much. And when the movie came out, I was like, holy smokes, did they ever change that up? They really did. It was actually a first lesson in writing and producing and saying, hey, wait a second. If Stephen King can do this, why can't I?
Yeah, I love that film, but I used to always be compared to Corey Feldman as a kid.
Oh, wow.
And I was always like, no.
Oh,
I did want to
no.
talk a little bit about Indian Summer, though, because it's not only like a conceptual, abstract notion within the text, but, the Indian Summer that we were talking a bit about in the back. Just getting back to those sort of political assertions that you're making in the text as well, even if they're sort of a bit more subtle or things like that. Could you speak to that a little bit?
To the political part of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got the Meech Lake Accord, Oka.
Totally, right? Like, I mean, just before this was this particular book was like, I mean, like 1979. The Niska were really powerful people, are really powerful people, and at that time, that court case in the late 70s. I mean, if it wasn't for the red paper, abolishing the white paper, there would never have been a Niska. It's all of these, indigenous people. The Niska had lawyers, English-speaking lawyers, within 10 years of colonization. Now, that's incredible. And I equate that to an ability to be able to see into the future, because they saw what was coming from the east. They knew the colonizers were coming. They didn't have a choice. So they did what was best for their people. They did what they had to do. Learn the language, learn the laws, and beat the shit out of them with it. That's what,
Well, I one thing I appreciate about your book is it's prefigurative in the sense that it imagines, while it deeps into the past, it still has a sort of futurity sort of embedded within it. And the great thing about that is that futurity of imagining politics otherwise, while we can look at that horizon, looking at that horizon can orient our present, in terms of how we want to act politically and ethically and all these things, and how we want to be in relation to one another. We can see that in the horizon, but it also simultaneously, in seeing that future, we can imagine the present through it. And so your writing really is very generative to me in that capacity.
Thank you. I've heard a lot about it. I didn't expect this. It's one of the things that I did not expect, to have the feedback that I have had from it. I'm grateful for it. I'm thankful. You know what, if there's one thing that this book has taught me, it's kind of like, writing a book is like raising a child. It takes a village to write to raise a child. It takes a community to write a book. It's not just me. It's my cohort, the people who worked on this with me in the beginning, who got to see me cry in class, and Anne, who drove me home every night, and Marion, who we talk religiously, and we have 3-hour conversations, and Sarah, you're all there. It was a painful process, and if I didn't have that support, I know I wouldn't have been able to write the story. I know that I wouldn't have happened without my friends, without my writing cohort. My cohort is everything to me. I owe this to them. I really do. If anybody's ever thinking about going to the TWS, seriously, it's going to be my only plug for the night. If you're an aspiring writer and you need to get your shit together and really put decent piece of work together for yourselves. You know, if it's memoir, go see JJ. If it's creative writing, go see Kevin Chong. You know, if it's poetry, and I don't think Betsy Warland's there anymore, but, you know, there's a really great crew there. So they helped me. Oh, you know, there's some talk, but I don't take it seriously. I try not to actually, I'm trying not to do anything. I'm trying to keep the book away from me because I have other things that I need to work on. I'm working on Storm Cloud's Treat. And that's a horror fantasy based in the Cree world. And so it's a Wendigo who's going around exacting revenge on the Catholic Church. And so my agent is very excited about it. My publisher is very excited about it.
I'm excited about it.
I'm pretty excited about it. And when I read it to my group, they were horrified but excited for me.
So we'll take one last question, and then I think our time is up. But yeah.
JJ, like, okay, so the original title for this book was supposed to be The Entrepreneur. And yeah, and JJ's like, we need to think of a different title because entrepreneur is too hard to spell and I can never say it properly, you know. And so we banged our heads together and I came up with Indian Summer. And JJ's like, yeah, I like that, but it needs something more. I'm like, okay, we'll think about it. A couple of days later, he called me up and he's like, my Indian Summer. I'm like, yeah, okay, perfect. There you go. That's kind of how it went.
Is it quick? Okay. All right. Well, you can buy it like right after the talk.
Yeah. 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 There's a couple of in media res moments where it goes back, and it's the saving the cat moment where I'm, you know, saving the Margaret character. I'm making the character redeemable, and so. If it wasn't for those, the book wouldn't have worked, because then the mother would have been just a completely evil person, and that's not true, because, I mean, she wasn't an evil person. She was just, you know, she did the best she could. Okay.
You're inspiring writers here. Oh my God.
These guys are already published writers, so, you know, come on.
What do you call a dog with 3 legs? A dog.
Oh my God.
And so with that, I want to thank Joseph for this chat, and it's been very enlightening, and round of applause. And with that said, we have books up here that you can purchase, I believe, and Joseph will inscribe for you. And yeah, this was a pleasure. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you.